The crew of the Earth Alliance vessel Horizon moved with purpose across the bridge. They spoke in hushed tones and exchanged knowing glances. At the center of it all sat Captain William Elias, silent as always, his eyes fixed on the vast starfield displayed on the main screen. Everyone knew Captain Elias rarely spoke. Some newer crew members had never heard his voice at all. Lieutenant Kate Monroe, who had served under him for 3 years, had counted exactly 27 words from him in that time. She kept a small notebook where she recorded each one, like rare gems. Approaching diplomatic coordinates, Captain, said Commander Gregory Allen, the first officer. He stood tall beside the captain's chair, datapad in hand. Captain Elias nodded once. That was enough. The bridge crew understood. Maintain course, standard protocol. The Horizon wasn't a warship. Its sleek, white hull contained meeting rooms, cultural exhibits, and translation systems rather than weapons. As Earth's premier diplomatic vessel, it carried humanity's hopes for joining the wider galactic community. In his quarters the night before, Elias had read the mission briefing again. After decades of distant observation, the Galactic Conclave had finally extended an invitation to humans. 7 advanced alien species, each with technology centuries beyond Earth's capabilities, would meet with him to evaluate humanity's readiness to join their coalition. Elias touched a small screen on his chair arm. An image appeared. Earth as seen from lunar orbit, blue and perfect. He allowed himself a rare slight smile. Message from Earth Alliance Command, Captain, called out Communications Officer Peter Wright. Admiral Garcia sends his final instructions for the conclave meeting. Elias extended his hand. Wright placed a data crystal in his palm. The captain slipped it into his console and read the message privately. His expression didn't change, but his shoulders tensed slightly. Commander Allen noticed. After 5 years serving as Elias's right hand, he had learned to read the captain's silent language. Something in the message troubled him. "Sir," Allen asked quietly. Elias simply turned his palm downward, their private signal for later. The ship's AI announced, 45 minutes until rendezvous with conclave vessels. The bridge crew moved with increased focus. Lieutenant Monroe ran final diagnostics on the translation systems. Officer Wright adjusted communication frequencies. Navigator Lisa Foster fine-tuned their approach vector. In the observation lounge, cultural specialists Linda Benson and Ryan Oakes arranged Earth artifacts and prepared welcome gifts. They had studied each conclave species for months, learning appropriate gradings and taboos. Back on the bridge, Commander Allen approached the captain again. "Sir, the diplomatic team requests your presence for final briefing." Elias stood and straightened his uniform, crisp white with the blue Earth Alliance insignia. He followed Allen to the conference room, where 6 experts waited nervously around a table. "Captain," Dr. Susan Powell began, "we've prepared suggested responses to likely questions from each species." She pushed a datapad toward him. Elias glanced at it briefly, then set it down. "You don't want our prepared statements?" asked Dr. Powell, concerned. Commander Allen intervened. "The captain prefers to assess situations directly." The diplomatic team exchanged worried glances. Earth's future might depend on this meeting, and their captain barely spoke. "But sir," protested Dr. Jack Nelson, "the Visiri communicate through complex speech patterns. The Lumen respond to precise linguistic formulas, without the right words." Elias raised his hand slightly. The room fell silent. He pointed to his eyes, then to his ears, then tapped his temple. "The captain believes in observation first," translated Commander Allen. "He listens, watches, and understands before speaking." Dr. Powell sighed. "I hope that's enough. The conclave doesn't grant second chances." The ship's AI interrupted. Conclave vessels detected. Approaching in formation. Through the conference room viewport, 7 ships appeared from different directions. Each reflected its creators. The Visiri ship curved like a serpent, the Lumen vessel crystalline and refracting starlight. The Neth ship, a swirling cloud contained in a transparent sphere. 4 other equally strange vessels completed the formation, surrounding the horizon. Captain Elias watched them approach, his face calm. Whatever test awaited, he would face it his way, with careful observation, deep understanding, and if absolutely necessary, a few perfectly chosen words. The greatest first contact in human history was about to begin, and Earth's hopes rested with a captain known for his silence. The docking procedure took 20 minutes. Each Conclave ship connected to the horizon through special tubes that adjusted to match the environmental needs of each species. Captain Elias stood at the main airlock, Commander Allen and the diplomatic team beside him. Remember, no sudden movements around the Visiri. The lumen communicate partly through light patterns, so watch the translator screens. And whatever you do, don't inhale deeply near the Neth. Their bodies are partially gaseous, whispered Dr. Powell. The airlock hissed open. First through was a Visiri representative. It moved like flowing water, its serpentine body covered in iridescent scales that shifted color with each movement. Behind it came a lumen, a beam that seemed made of living crystal, refracting light in patterns that made several humans blink rapidly. Next floated a Neth, its body a swirling cloud of pale blue gas contained within a barely visible energy field. It was followed by 4 other beings, each stranger than the last. One that seemed made of interlocking geometric shapes, another resembling a tangle of vines and flowers, a third that changed form constantly, and a fourth that appeared as a rippling field of energy. Captain Elias studied each visitor carefully, his eyes missing nothing. While Commander Allen delivered the formal greeting, Elias observed how the aliens positioned themselves, which ones stayed closer together, which kept distance from others. The Conclave welcomes humans to this historic meeting. Translated the ship's AI from the complex sounds, lights, and movements the aliens produced. We have watched your development with interest. The meeting moved to the large conference room. The aliens arranged themselves around the circular table, with the humans filling in the remaining seats. Environment fields activated, allowing each species to exist comfortably in their preferred conditions. The being of geometric shapes spoke first. The translator identified it as Ambassador Zeth of the Melodran. For 10,000 cycles, the Conclave has maintained peace among the stars. New species are admitted only after careful evaluation. The vine-like creature added, humans have progressed quickly from planetary to interstellar travel. Some believe too quickly. Its translator badge identified it as Speaker Valeth of the Orali. The Visiri representative moved forward slightly, its scales flashing purple. We have studied your wars, your art, your sciences, impressive in some ways, concerning in others. Captain Elias sat motionless, watching and listening. The diplomatic team glanced at him nervously, waiting for him to respond to these veiled criticisms. He simply continued observing. The lumen flashed a complex pattern of lights. According to Conclave tradition, we have prepared a test to evaluate your species' readiness. The room grew tense. Dr. Powell leaned forward. We are prepared to demonstrate our scientific achievements, cultural values. The Neth interrupted, its cloud body pulsing. No, the test is specific to this meeting. Ambassador Zeth's geometric form reconfigured itself. Captain William Elias must negotiate with all 7 Conclave species simultaneously. You have 1 Earth day to reach consensus on the terms of humanity's admission. Shocked silence fell over the human side of the table. Commander Allen glanced at Elias, whose expression remained calm despite the impossible challenge. There must be some mistake, Dr. Nelson protested. Negotiations of this complexity typically take months, even years. That is precisely why this is the test, the Visiri said, scales now glowing deep blue. Conclave species communicate and think differently. Finding common ground quickly reveals much about a species' potential. Speaker Valeth added, the terms to be negotiated are not simple. Each of us has specific requirements that must be met before we agree to human admission. Lieutenant Monroe, monitoring the meeting from the bridge, whispered to Officer Wright, This is impossible. The captain hardly speaks at all, and they want him to negotiate with 7 alien species in one day. Back in the conference room, all eyes turned to Captain Elias. For a moment, everyone waited for him to protest or at least express concern about the unfair test. Instead, he simply nodded once. The aliens seemed surprised by this calm acceptance. The energy field being, identified as Elder Krith of the Visi, moved closer. Does the human captain understand the challenge? If you fail, Earth will not be reconsidered for Conclave membership for 50 years. Commander Allen started to respond, but Elias raised his hand slightly. The commander fell silent immediately. Captain Elias looked at each alien representative in turn, making direct eye contact with those that had eyes. Then he gestured toward the data screens, where the Conclave's specific requirements were now displayed. The message was clear. Let's begin. The next hours were unlike anything the Horizon crew had ever experienced. Each Conclave species presented their demands for accepting humanity. The list grew long and complicated, displayed on screens around the room in 7 different formats. The Visiri wanted Earth to restrict settlement in certain star systems they considered sacred pathways. The Lumen required humans to adopt specific communication protocols that seemed impossibly complex. The Neth demanded access to Earth's oceans for reasons they wouldn't fully explain. The other 4 species had equally challenging requirements. The Melodren wanted changes to human spacecraft designs. The Orelli insisted on strict wildlife protection laws. The Visi required energy production limits. The 7th species, the insect-like Tasik, demanded human genetic samples from every Earth region. Through it all, Captain Elias remained silent. He moved only to accept water from Commander Allen or to tap his screen to review information. The diplomatic team tried to jump in several times, but Elias always raised his hand slightly, stopping them. The captain must speak eventually, Dr. Powell whispered to Commander Allen. We're 4 hours in, and he hasn't said a single word. Allen watched his captain carefully. He's doing something. Look at his eyes. Indeed, Elias's eyes never stopped moving. He watched each alien as they spoke, noting which ones reacted to others' demands. He studied how they positioned themselves when discussing certain topics. He observed patterns in their movements, light signals, and energy fluctuations. 6 hours into the meeting, the Conclave representatives grew restless. Does the human captain refuse to engage? Asked the Melodren ambassador, its geometric shapes rearranging in apparent agitation. Silence is not negotiation. The Visiri scales flashed red. Perhaps humans are not ready for Conclave membership if their chosen representative cannot communicate. Commander Allen felt he needed to defend his captain. Captain Elias has his own approach. The Tadzik representative interrupted with a series of clicking sounds. We did not ask for the subordinate's opinion. The captain must speak for humanity. Still, Elias remained silent. Instead, he stood and walked slowly around the table, studying the data screens showing each species' demands. He paused occasionally, comparing information between screens. The lumen flashed bright patterns that the translator interpreted as frustration. Half of your allotted time has passed. No progress has been made. Dr. Nelson couldn't stay quiet any longer. Captain, with respect, we need to respond to their terms. Elias didn't acknowledge him. Instead, he returned to his seat and began typing on his personal console. The large screen at the front of the room activated, showing a star map of Conclave territory. The aliens turned to watch as Elias began marking various points on the map. He highlighted trade routes, disputed regions, resource-rich systems, and cultural landmarks. Then he overlaid the demands of each species onto this map. A pattern emerged. The Visiri's sacred pathways crossed resource areas the Melodren wanted humans to avoid. The ocean access the Neth demanded would impact energy production limits required by the Visi. Every demand seemed connected to others in ways that created a complex web of conflicts. Fascinating, said Speaker Valeth of the Orelli, vine tendrils curling with interest. The human maps are existing conflicts without speaking a word. The Neth's gaseous form pulsed rapidly. This is merely observation, not negotiation. We require solutions, not analysis. But Captain Elias continued his silent work. He added another layer to the map. Historical data showing how Conclave territories had shifted over centuries. Then he added economic information, resource distribution, and migration patterns. By hour 10, some of the alien representatives were clearly uncomfortable. The lumen's crystal structure dimmed noticeably. The Melodrin's geometric patterns became less symmetrical. The Viserys scales shifted between colors rapidly. "What is he doing?" Lieutenant Monroe asked from her observation post. "At this rate, we'll fail the test." Officer Wright shook his head. "I think he's forcing them to see something they don't want to see." As the 12th hour approached, halfway through their allotted time, Commander Allen grew truly worried. Captain Elias had not spoken a single word, had not directly addressed any of the Conclave's demands. Instead, he continued building his complex map of interconnections, contradictions, and historical patterns. The Visi Elder's energy field crackled with what seemed like impatience. Does the human captain intend to speak at all during these negotiations? Captain Elias simply looked up from his work and made direct eye contact with the Visi. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled slightly and returned to his mapping. Hour 14 arrived with tension filling the conference room. The Conclave representatives began arguing among themselves. Captain Elias continued his silent work, occasionally adding new information to his complex map. "The Neth demands are unreasonable," declared the Viserys representative, scales flashing angry red. "You seek access to Earth's oceans, yet you block our request for similar access to the water worlds in the Cygnus sector." The Neth's gaseous form swirled faster. That was different. The Cygnus planets contain life forms under our protection, as Earth's oceans contain life forms under human protection, Commander Allen pointed out quietly. The Tadzik representative made sharp clicking sounds. "The commander speaks when his captain does not. Humans have strange customs." Dr. Powell leaned toward Captain Elias. "Sir, they're beginning to fight among themselves. This could be our opportunity to present a compromise." Elias didn't respond. He simply watched the growing conflict with intense focus. The Melodrin ambassador's geometric form shifted into sharper angles. The Orelli demand that humans protect wildlife, yet they harvested living crystal from lumen planets for generations. That was before the Conclave Treaty. Speaker Valeth's vine tendrils whipped in agitation. "We have provided reparations as agreed." The lumen flashed patterns so bright that the humans winced. The translator conveyed, "Inadequate reparations. Our crystal forests still have not recovered." The argument escalated quickly. Ancient grievances between species emerged. The carefully maintained peace of the Conclave began to crack open, revealing deep divisions beneath. "We tolerated the Visi energy restrictions for centuries." The Tadzik clicked angrily. "Yet you would impose the same on humans immediately." Elder Krith's energy field darkened. "Our restrictions prevented resource wars, something your species caused 3 times before joining the Conclave." Lieutenant Monroe watched from her station, growing increasingly worried. "They're tearing each other apart. How does this help our case?" Officer Wright studied the captain's map displayed on his monitor. "Wait, I think I see what the captain is doing. He's letting them expose the flaws in their own system." In the conference room, the situation deteriorated further. The Viserys and Neth representatives were now facing each other directly, a sign of serious confrontation in both cultures. "Your species has always claimed neutrality while secretly favoring the crystalline worlds," accused the Viserys. "And your kind has monopolized the trade routes since the Conclave's founding," countered the Neth. Captain Elias watched it all, his expression calm despite the chaos. Commander Allen stood ready, waiting for his captain's signal, trusting there was purpose in this approach. At hour 16, With just 8 hours remaining, Dr. Nelson approached Elias directly. "Captain, we're running out of time. The Conclave is fracturing before our eyes. If you have a plan, now is the time." For the first time since the meeting began, Elias acknowledged one of his team. He gave Dr. Nelson a single, slow nod. Suddenly, the Meladrin ambassador slammed a geometric appendage onto the table. "This meeting is pointless. Humans watch while we reveal our weaknesses. I suggest we end this test and deny Earth membership." Several representatives signaled agreement. The mood in the room darkened considerably. "Perhaps this was the human strategy all along," suggested the Orelli speaker, "to observe our conflicts rather than address our demands." Commander Allen looked to his captain with real fear now. Earth's chance at joining the Conclave was slipping away with each passing minute. The lumen's light patterns became erratic. "I withdraw my support for human membership. Their silence shows disrespect for Conclave traditions." One by one, the alien representatives began to agree. The test was failing. Earth would be isolated for another 50 years. Dr. Powell stood up. "Please, Captain Elias has been analyzing the situation carefully. If you could just..." "Enough." The Vissi Elder's energy field crackled dangerously. "This test is concluded. Humans have failed to negotiate in good faith." The aliens began disconnecting their translation devices. Several stood to leave. In that critical moment, when all seemed lost, Captain William Elias finally moved. He stood slowly, his tall figure commanding immediate attention. The room fell completely silent. Every eye, sensory appendage, and energy receptor turned toward the human captain who had not spoken a single word in nearly 17 hours of supposed negotiations. Elias looked at each representative in turn, his gaze steady and certain. He took a deep breath. The entire crew of the Horizon held their breath, waiting for their captain to speak at last. The silence in the conference room was complete. Even the hum of the ship's systems seemed to fade away as Captain Elias prepared to speak. The Conclave representatives had paused in their motions to leave, curious despite their frustration. Commander Allen held his breath. Dr. Powell gripped the edge of the table. The entire diplomatic team leaned forward slightly, not wanting to miss the rare sound of their captain's voice. Elias looked around the room once more, his eyes moving from the star map he had created to each alien representative. Then he spoke a single sentence, his voice clear and calm. "You've built a system where every species must fight for fairness rather than a system that is fundamentally fair." 17 words. After 17 hours of silence, Captain William Elias spoke just 17 words. The effect was immediate and stunning. The Viserys scales froze in mid-color change. The lumen's crystal structure seemed to vibrate at a new frequency. The Neth's gaseous form became completely still. For several seconds, no one moved or spoke. The translation systems processed the sentence, delivering it in the unique language of each species. Then chaos erupted, but not the angry chaos from before. The Conclave representatives began communicating rapidly with each other, their movements, lights, and sounds overlapping in a frenzied exchange. The human diplomatic team looked confused. Commander Allen turned to the captain. "Sir, what just happened?" Elias didn't answer. He simply sat down and waited, watching the aliens with the same careful attention he had shown all day. Lieutenant Monroe's voice came through Allen's earpiece. "Commander, what did the captain say?" "The aliens are going crazy," he said. Allen paused, trying to recall the exact words. "He said they built a system where everyone must fight for fairness instead of a system that's fundamentally fair." "That's it." Monroe sounded disappointed. After all this time. But something extraordinary was happening. The Meladrin ambassador's geometric shapes were reconfiguring rapidly, forming patterns never seen before. The Vissi Elder's energy field pulsed with new colors. The Tazic representative was making clicking sounds at speeds the translator couldn't process. Dr. Powell studied her datapad in amazement. Their biological signs are off the charts. Heart rates, neural activity, energy emissions. It's like they're all having some kind of revelation. The Orelli speaker was the first to approach Captain Elias. Its vine tendrils moved gently, almost respectfully. In 10,000 years of Conclave history, no one has ever. How did you? The translator struggled to keep up with the plant-like being's rapid communication. The lumen flashed a pattern that the translator interpreted as, "The human captain sees the pattern we ourselves created, but could not perceive." The Vasiri representative moved closer, scales now glowing a deep purple that none of the humans had seen before. "You watched. You listened. You mapped our conflicts. And you identified the fundamental flaw in our entire system with perfect accuracy." Commander Allen looked at his captain with new understanding. "You weren't negotiating because you saw that the problem wasn't with their demands. It was with the Conclave itself." Elias nodded once. The Neth representative expanded its gaseous form. "Explain further, Commander. We wish to understand how your captain reached this insight." Allen looked at Elias, who gave him a slight nod to continue. "The captain noticed that your demands weren't really about us at all. They were about long-standing imbalances among yourselves. Each of you was using Earth's admission to try to correct inequities in the Conclave system. Instead of working together as equals," Dr. Powell added, realizing what the captain had seen, "you're constantly bargaining and competing with each other." The Melodran ambassador's form settled into a perfectly balanced geometric pattern. "For thousands of years, we have maintained what we believed was peace, but it was merely managed conflict." The Tazik's clicking slowed to a comprehensible pace. The human captain's silence forced us to expose our own dysfunction. His map revealed patterns we have ignored for generations. And his words, the Visi Elder's field brightened, named the truth we could not see for ourselves. Captain Elias touched his screen. The star map zoomed out, showing the entire Conclave territory. He added a new layer, a model showing how resources, responsibilities, and benefits could be distributed more equitably across species. The lumen's crystal structure caught the light differently now. The human offers a solution as well as a diagnosis. The Vasiri representative turned to address the other aliens. "I propose we reconsider the purpose of this test." The Neth pulsed in agreement. The test was meant to evaluate humanity's readiness for the Conclave. Perhaps it has instead evaluated the Conclave's readiness for humanity. The next few hours transformed the meeting entirely. The Conclave representatives no longer debated Earth's worthiness to join them. Instead, they examined Captain Elias's map with intense focus, discussing how their own system might be reformed. The Horizon's crew watched in amazement. Lieutenant Monroe left her station on the bridge to join Officer Wright at the observation post. "I can't believe it," she whispered. The captain said one sentence and completely changed a 10,000-year-old galactic alliance. Wright nodded. "And look at him now. He's back to complete silence." Indeed, Captain Elias had returned to his quiet observation. He occasionally adjusted his map based on the aliens' discussions, but offered no further words. Commander Allen acted as his voice when necessary, explaining aspects of the captain's model when asked. By hour 20, the Conclave representatives had reached a surprising consensus. The Vasiri scales now glowed a steady blue as it addressed the room. "We propose a new agreement. Earth will join the Conclave not as a junior member subject to our demands, but as an equal partner helping to establish a more balanced system." The lumen flashed in agreement. "Captain Elias has shown us what we could not see for ourselves. This insight is more valuable than any concession we might have demanded." Dr. Powell looked stunned. "You're offering us full membership without restrictions." "Not exactly." The Melodran ambassador's geometric form shifted into a complex but harmonious pattern. "We are offering a mutual restructuring. The old Conclave system will evolve, with human insight helping guide that evolution." The Neth's gaseous form expanded slightly. "Where we once sought to test you, we now seek your assistance." Captain Elias saw in hours what we failed to recognize in millennia. Elder Krith of the Visi approached Elias directly. Would Earth be willing to help us reshape the Conclave into something truly fair for all species? All eyes turned to the captain. After a moment, he gave a single definitive nod. Commander Allen smiled with pride. The captain agrees. Earth would be honored to help build a more equitable galactic community. The Tadzik representative made pleased clicking sounds. Then we have consensus, 4 hours ahead of the deadline. Earth is welcomed into the Conclave under these new terms. The conference room filled with the various sounds, lights, and movements that signified celebration across the 7 alien cultures. The human diplomatic team exchanged relieved glances, still processing their unexpected victory. Dr. Nelson approached Commander Allen. I admit I doubted the captain's approach. I thought his silence would doom our chances. Many of us did, Allen replied quietly. But he saw what we couldn't, that the problem wasn't with their demands, but with the system that created those demands. On the bridge, the news spread quickly. Cheers erupted from stations throughout the ship. Earth had secured not just membership in the Conclave, but an equal partnership that would benefit humanity for generations. Captain Elias remained calm amid the celebration. He continued refining his model, adding details to the new Conclave structure based on the agreements being made. Later, as the meeting concluded and formal documents were prepared, the Orelli speaker approached Elias. Its vine tendrils moved in what the humans now recognized as a gesture of deep respect. In our culture, we have a concept called the perfect word. The idea that a single, precisely chosen word can change the course of history. Today, Captain William Elias, you spoke the perfect sentence. The Vasiri added, we have existed for thousands of years believing we had created the ideal system. You showed us the truth with 17 words. 17 words at precisely the right moment, the lumen flashed. After 17 hours of careful observation, Commander Allen stood by his captain, feeling a sense of awe. Allen had served under Elias for 5 years and had always respected his quiet leadership. But today had revealed something more, a profound wisdom in knowing when to remain silent and when to speak. As the Conclave representatives prepared to return to their ships, they each made formal farewells to the captain. The Neth was the last to leave. Its gaseous form shifted into a shape that resembled a human hand offering a salute. Your words will echo through the Conclave for generations to come, Captain Elias. Sometimes the quietest voice makes the greatest impact. Elias simply nodded, then turned to begin preparations for Earth's new role in the galaxy. The Horizon's mission had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, except, perhaps, those of its silent captain. 3 months passed. The news of Earth's acceptance into the Galactic Conclave spread across human colonies and outposts. Captain William Elias became an unlikely hero, though he avoided the spotlight and refused all interview requests. Today, the Horizon orbited a beautiful blue-green planet called Harmonium, where representatives from all Conclave species had gathered for a historic summit. The planet had been chosen for its neutral status and ability to support diverse life forms. In the ship's ready room, Commander Allen briefed his captain before they transported to the surface. The new Conclave charter is ready for signing, sir. Based on your model, they've restructured everything. Resource sharing, dispute resolution, technology exchange. Earth representatives have been deeply involved in the process. Elias nodded, studying the final document on his screen. Admiral Garcia asked me to tell you that Earth Alliance Command is beyond impressed. Allen continued. They're already calling it the Elias Principle, the idea that true cooperation requires fundamental fairness rather than constant negotiation. A small smile appeared on the captain's face, just for a moment. Oh, and there's been a request, Allen added. The Conclave leaders would like you to say a few words at the signing ceremony. Elias raised an eyebrow. I know. Allen chuckled. I told them you're not one for speeches. They said even a single sentence would be meaningful, given the circumstances. The captain considered this, then gave a slight nod. An hour later, they stood in the Grand Assembly on Harmonium's surface. The hall was designed to accommodate all Conclave species, with environment bubbles and translation fields ensuring everyone's comfort. Dr. Powell approached Elias before the ceremony began. "Captain, I wanted to apologize for doubting your approach during the negotiations. We all thought you needed to speak more, not less." Elias merely shook his head slightly, dismissing the need for apology. "I've been studying communication theory since then," Powell continued. "There's an ancient Earth concept called active listening that's similar to what you did. But you took it further. You observed patterns no one else could see because you weren't distracted by your own words." The captain nodded in agreement. The ceremony began with representatives from each species taking turns to address the assembly. When all 8 conclave members, the original 7 plus Earth, had spoken, the Visiri leader invited Captain Elias to the central platform. A hush fell over the vast hall. Stories of the silent human captain who spoke one sentence and changed the conclave forever had spread throughout the galaxy. Many beings present had traveled great distances just to witness this moment. Elias walked to the platform, his tall figure commanding attention without effort. The various species watched him with their different sensory organs, eyes, light receptors, electromagnetic sensors, and other more exotic means of perception. For a moment, he stood silently, surveying the assembled representatives of dozens of worlds. Then he spoke, his voice clear and measured. "True unity comes not from erasing our differences, but from building systems that value all perspectives equally." Another single sentence, another profound truth. The hall erupted in the various sounds, lights, and movements that constituted applause across the different species. The translation systems worked overtime, conveying his words in hundreds of languages and communication forms. As Elias returned to his place, Lieutenant Monroe whispered to Officer Wright, "The captain sure knows how to make words count." The formal signing began. Each representative approached the central table to mark the new charter in their species' traditional way. The Visiri left a scale impression. The lumen embedded a tiny crystal. The Neth infused a small portion of its gaseous form. The other species followed with their own unique signatures. Admiral Maria Evans, representing Earth, used traditional ink to sign her name. Then she handed the pen to Captain Elias, who had been asked to add his signature as the architect of the new system. Elias hesitated only briefly before writing his name in small, neat letters below the admiral's. It was, perhaps, the most words he had written at once in years. As the ceremony concluded, the Meladrin ambassador approached the human delegation. "From this day forward, the Elias principle will guide not just the conclave, but all our interactions with new species we encounter." The orally speaker added, "Already, 3 more worlds have requested membership under the new system. Your captain's insight has created a true renaissance across the galaxy." Admiral Evans smiled proudly. "Captain Elias has always believed that the most important thing is not how much you say, but what you say, and when you choose to say it." Elias himself stood slightly apart from the conversation, watching the diverse beings mingling throughout the hall. Species that had once been suspicious of each other now engaged in open exchange. The fundamental shift he had identified was already bearing fruit. Commander Allen joined his captain. "Quite an achievement, sir. Your words will echo across the stars for generations." Elias turned to his first officer and, unexpectedly, spoke a third sentence. "Sometimes the universe just needs someone to listen before it can hear itself." 5 years later, the Horizon docked at Earth's orbital station. After a long and successful mission exploring the far reaches of conclave space, Captain William Elias was finally coming home. The ship looked different now. Sections had been modified with technology from various conclave species. The crew had changed too, with several alien specialists now serving alongside humans. The Horizon had become a symbol of the new era of cooperation. In his quarters, Elias packed his few personal items. His time as captain was ending. Earth Alliance had promoted him to admiral, with responsibility for training new captains who would lead humanity's growing fleet of diplomatic vessels. Commander Allen, now Captain Allen with his own command waiting, entered after a respectful knock. "The crew is assembled in the main hangar bay, sir. They'd like to say goodbye." Elias nodded and followed his longtime second-in-command through the familiar corridors. The hangar was packed. Every crew member stood at attention, humans alongside the Conclave specialists who had joined them. Lieutenant Monroe, now Commander Monroe and Allen's new first officer, stepped forward. "Captain Elias, we wanted to thank you before you leave us. Your leadership changed not just our lives, but the entire galaxy." Elias listened with his usual calm expression. "We've prepared something for you," Monroe continued. She handed him a small crystal cube. "It's a Lumen memory crystal. Inside is a single word from every crew member. The one word they feel best describes what they learned serving under you." Elias held the cube carefully. When activated, it would project each word in sequence, a collection of the crew's most meaningful thoughts. Officer Wright stepped forward next. "And this is from the Conclave Council." He presented an ornate box. "They asked us to give it to you privately." Elias opened the box. Inside was a small device of clearly alien design. Wright explained, "It's called an echo sphere. When activated, it records a single sentence and preserves it perfectly for 10,000 years. The Council thought it appropriate, given your economy of words." A slight smile crossed the captain's face. He pocketed both gifts and looked out at his crew one final time. To everyone's surprise, he spoke. "Our words matter. Choose them wisely." A hush fell over the hangar. 4 sentences in 5 years, each one memorable. The crew saluted as Elias made his way to the shuttle that would take him to Earth's surface. As the hangar doors closed behind him, the legend of the silent captain who changed the galaxy with a single sentence was already spreading to new worlds. 20 years passed. The principles Elias had identified transformed the Conclave from a loose alliance into a true galactic community. Dozens of new species joined under the more equitable system. In a classroom at the Earth Alliance Academy, a young cadet raised her hand. "Professor, is it true that Admiral Elias only spoke once during the original Conclave negotiations?" Professor Allen, retired from active service but still devoted to training the next generation, smiled at the question. "That's what the stories say. In reality, Captain Elias, as he was then, had spoken a total of less than 100 words in the 5 years before that mission. He believed in the power of observation and the impact of carefully chosen words." "And did he really change everything with just one sentence?" another cadet asked. "He did," Allen confirmed. "I was there. 17 words that identified a fundamental flaw in a 10,000-year-old system, words that still echo through the galaxy today." A Lumen cadet, crystal structure gleaming in the sunlight from the windows, raised a light appendage. "In my culture, we have studied the Elias principle extensively, but no one knows what happened to Admiral Elias after he retired. Did he ever speak publicly again?" Allen looked out the window toward the distant mountains. "No. After establishing the training program for diplomatic captains, he retreated to a small cabin in those mountains. He received visitors occasionally, diplomats, leaders, people seeking wisdom, but he rarely spoke to them. Instead, he would listen for hours, then write a single sentence on a piece of paper." "What happened to those sentences?" the first cadet asked. "They're collected in the Conclave Grand Library, 317 sentences that form the core of modern diplomatic theory, each one perfectly crafted, distilled from countless hours of listening." As class ended, the cadets gathered their materials. One lingered, approaching Professor Allen's desk. "Sir, I've decided. I want to specialize in diplomatic service, like Captain Elias." Allen studied the young man. "It's a challenging path. Why choose it?" The cadet straightened his posture. "Because I believe what Admiral Elias taught us, that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is listen before we speak." Allen smiled and nodded. "He would have liked you." Far away in those distant mountains, in a simple wooden cabin, an elderly man sat on his porch. His eyes were still sharp as he watched the stars appear in the evening sky. A small smile crossed his weathered face as he listened to the night sounds, nature's conversation that had continued for billions of years. The galaxy still echoed with his words, but William Elias found equal wisdom in silence.